Morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I just wanted to kick off with a couple of thank yous. Believe it or not, this is actually the 30th season I've had the privilege of working in Major League Baseball, and I was reminded yesterday, it was such an emotional day for so many people, given Dennis Eckersley's retirement. I was just reminded what a privilege it is to be in baseball, and I wanted to thank our players. I think we had 54 players. Chaim, you can correct me on our Major League roster, and their families. I want to thank our front office, the individuals that work really hard each and every day to be great at their jobs and great as a front office. Especially want to thank our employees in Southwest Florida and their families who have gone through a really tough time the last couple of weeks, obviously. I want to thank all of you guys, the media, for grinding it out in a long season. We respect the job that you have to do, and we're appreciative of it, believe it or not. I want to thank our fans, undeniably the best in all of baseball. They were there for us in what was an incredibly disappointing season. And lastly, I'll just say it again, Dennis Eckersley, Jennifer Eckersley, the whole crew, thank you for an awesome run. We're going to miss you a ton, and we're really appreciative of everything. And last thing I'll say is we fell short of our goal this year. Each and every year, our goal is to play baseball in October, and that's on us. That's on the group that you're looking at right here. We're responsible for putting a team on the field that's built to compete into October and win a World Series championship. We obviously fell way short of that, but we are incredibly confident in our group. We've been in this position before, and we're excited about building this thing back up and being competitive in 2023 and beyond. And so we ask for our fans to continue to show us the support that they have for the past 2 decades. So thanks, Justin. Back to you.
Johnny, you want to kick us off today?
He's back.
How big a job would it be to sign Boca and will you talk before he's able to talk to other teams?
Yeah, well, Johnny, as you know, I don't ever want to make public any of the blow by blow, but what I can say is this: that process is going to start right away from our end, and obviously, we know we haven't found that path yet. We still want to. We're going to work really hard at it.
How big a job is it to rebuild this team in 6 months?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, but that's part of what's going to make it exciting. We've, unfortunately, because of the way the season went, we've had, some time to think about this. And in thinking about it, that's made me even more excited to tackle it with this group here. It's supposed to be hard. And, it's going to be exciting to go after it and to do the job.
Sam, you often talk about John and Tom being stewards in the organization. You guys came in last place. Why aren't they here today to discuss their plans for the future and what they think needs to happen?
Yeah, John Henry and Tom Werner have been stewards of this franchise since 2002. I think it's undeniable that they've been the best owners of the Boston Red Sox. As someone who grew up here, diehard Red Sox fan, for those of you who've been around longer than me, I think we would all acknowledge that. They're as accountable as anyone in our organization. They want to win as much as anyone in our organization. In terms of media briefings and events like this, that's part of our job responsibility to sit down and do the sort of year-end download. We try to do it the best we can. We try to be as accessible to you guys as possible throughout the whole season. But John and Tom's commitment level to this organization is as high as it's ever been. I think Chaim and AC and BOH can tell you the amount of interaction, involvement, guidance that they provide is as at a high a level as it's ever been.
Sam, with all respect, you're as accountable as anybody in the organization that I've ever around to speak to the issues that their fan base is talking about. Where's the accountability?
Yeah, again, part of our job is to speak with the media and the fans. Sorry.
You said you spoke to their accountability.
Yeah, I think I spoke to it, Buck. Do you have another question?
You said that they are as accountable, but yet they're not here to answer the questions that the fans are asking. So where's the accountability? Where's their accountability?
That's you have a pointed question that they need to be accountable, and I'm telling you that this organization, led by John Henry and Tom Werner, has been a model franchise for the past 2 decades. We've had a disappointing year this year. We all acknowledge that.
Tim, you guys went on a new path a couple of years ago when you hired Hyman. How satisfied are you with where things are going in the organization, with 2 last place finishes in the last year?
Yeah, it's been frustrating in terms of the record of the American League East this year, but we couldn't be more confident in our entire baseball operations leadership, led by Chaim and BOH, and obviously Alex.
You said confident a couple times, like you're incredibly confident that you guys can, be better next year. But like, why so? Like, you guys got dominated by the AL East. What makes you confident?
Well, we have tremendous confidence in the strategic thinking, the direction that Chaim and BOH are taking us, but it's probably best for Chaim to speak to sort of his thoughts about where we are as a group right now and where we're going in 2023.
Yeah, look, I mean, to start with, first of all, the bottom line with respect to 2022 is we didn't get it done, period. I mean, it's obviously important for us, especially internally, to look at why that is. But it is the case. We expected to be in the postseason, and we're not. And so in that, not only we let our fans down, we let ourselves down. Now, having said that, going through this and digesting everything that happened this year, what worked, what didn't, and why, and even zooming out and looking, at more than just this year, I think what it comes down to is that, when we work together well, when we focus on, doing the right things and making good moves, a lot of good things happen. And, this was true last year too. It's just more pointed when you have a season like this and it punches you in the face. But you always have to learn and to try to separate, from what went well and what didn't, the why. And then looking at that and, looking at what we can do this offseason, looking at what we have, and then looking at what we need to do and how we're going to go about it, I feel like it's all there for us, to do a really good job and get us back where we belong.
Can you elaborate on that? What did go wrong and why?
Well, there's this is obviously something that's tough to unpack in this format. I think when I look at it, I look at 2 things. One, we showed at points that there's a lot of talent, that there was a lot of talent this year in that room downstairs. But in a lot of ways, it didn't fit together as well as it needed to. There's always going to be things you can't control. We need to focus on what we can control. And we need to make sure that, we put a roster together that can withstand some things going wrong, because in most seasons, unless you get lucky, they do. And then besides that, we all need to work together and to do a really good job at making sure that we are getting the most out of all the talent that we have in the organization. It's nice and important to talk about, learning some of the lessons that these guys learn and talk about upside and talking about potential. The bottom line is we got to do it. And, we've already, really for the last month, I mean, Alex and I and others, we've had great conversations about how to level up in that respect and how to keep advancing the ball so that we can get more out of the talent in the room and make sure that it's coming to play and that we're putting us in as good a position as we can to win every game that day.
So hoping to get you to be more specific because, first base or the rotation, what went wrong and why, we didn't hold a roster you said that could withstand those things, what went wrong and why?
Yeah, I think we set out to do that, but obviously to get where we got, I think with the talent that we had, a lot of different things had to happen. It was different things at different points. At times, our offensive performance was uneven, or it didn't come through in the right moments. We started off the year playing really well defensively, and then as the year went on, that didn't go as well. Our pitching was obviously up and down the whole year. We didn't lock down games in the bullpen the way we need to. There's a lot of things within that also went right, but those are some of the things that obviously we need to set ourselves up to have better results going forward.
You said Xander, that process starts right away. Would you say that he's your number one priority as the offseason starts?
Yeah, just because of the timing of his free agency. Obviously, until we get after the World Series, there's a lot of other things that we can plan for but not do. This is something we can work on right away.
Do you hope to get a deal done before he can opt out?
Yeah, look, that's no different from where we've been. Our position hasn't changed on that. I know, I've said this before. Nothing I say really matters unless there's a deal. But our position's been the same, that we want to keep him here for a long time. We want him here on a deal that we're going to look back on and say this is great for everybody. We see what happens. We just got to the end of one of those with JD, and I think everybody can feel that one worked out for everybody involved, and we want to build around him and win with him.
Sam, I'll ask this of you because of your position and your tenure. This is the 5th last place finish in 11 years. Only one other team in baseball has finished last that many times in that span. A couple have finished last 4 times. What they have in common is they're mostly medium and small market teams or teams that are rebuilding. How is it that a team with these resources and that spends as it does has had such a boom-bust cycle for the last decade under 4 GMs and 4 different managers, and what do you do to stop it?
Well, finishing in last place is brutal. It's certainly not what we set out to do, and I guess you could dive into lots of detail around why each last place finish occurred, but at a high level, from where I sit, it's underperformance across the board, and that starts with us. So it's on us. When we finish in last place, when we win a World Series, the leadership of the organization is responsible for it. And so we've had underperformance this year, and that's on us. We need to be better.
Along the lines of the clubs and festival, you guys have always had one of the higher payrolls in baseball. You have a lot of money coming off the books. Do you anticipate maintaining a top payroll with moves that have to come this offseason?
Yeah, I anticipate our ownership group continuing to invest across our baseball operation, whether that's Major League payroll, whether that's international signings, scouting, player development, analytics, infrastructure, medical. The commitment to spending has been there. How those resources have been allocated, the underperformance, just not getting it done. Again, that's on us. That's not an ownership level thing. That's at our level, and we're responsible for that. So we've had the commitment to spend in all areas, and I do not see that changing as we go forward. We just need to be better.
Alex, do you anticipate bringing back all your same coaches?
Yes. Yeah. We talked to the possible free agents yesterday, and everybody's going to be back.
In regards to pitching, rotation, and bullpen, some of the moves that you've made in the previous years have been on the periphery, and those guys have worked out. But how much importance or urgency do you factor into signing maybe a bigger, more proven either closer or starter, given how much uncertainty there is in both areas of the roster?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things that history and common sense will show you is that when you get focused on anything other than just making good moves, it's not going to serve you well. So, I think we need to focus on that more than on, what we call someone or what kind of splash we're making. But I would say this. We've seen, and through both success and challenges, we've seen some of the pitching depth that we have in the organization come to the fore. Obviously, this year we had to throw them in the fire more than we wanted to, but I think they will all be better for it. I do think we're in a different position with respect to that allows us and should allow us to focus on on guys that we don't need to be as focused on just building up that depth. You always need depth, but we can also look at guys who can slot in. And provide some impact, whether that's at the beginning of the game or at the end of the game. So that's definitely going to be a focus of ours. But really, when you talk about our pitching staff or the roster in general, we talked about it. Johnny talked about it. There's a lot that we need to do this offseason, so we need to be focused on the whole board. But because of some of the depth on the pitching side that we built up, I think we're going to be considering a little bit different set of possibilities.
There's some guys that you missed out on that you had interest in the offseason. You go into this offseason with the money that you have to spend, maybe with a slightly more aggressive approach in that, or is there anything you can learn from your previous offseasons?
Yeah, I would be cautious to put too much into what's out there on the rumor mill. I mean, the fact of the matter is, in any offseason, we should show interest in a lot more guys than we are ultimately going to end up with. If we don't do that, we're not doing our jobs. So when you do that, you're ultimately, going to end up with only a small handful of those players. You just need to make sure you end up with the right guys on the right deals. And especially when you're the Boston Red Sox and you show interest in someone, or even sometimes when you don't, it's going to be out there. So I think that creates an appearance that might be different from the reality. It just comes back to making good decisions. I do think we're in a position right now where we know we have a lot to tackle. We've already identified some of the ways we want to tackle it. Obviously, some of it there's still work ahead of us, and some of it we have to see if when we can, if interest is mutual, and as we get into talking to other teams, what's possible there. So some of that is still going to develop over time, but yeah, it's really just a question of making the right deals, and we're going to want to be aggressive after guys we identify as really good targets for us.
Brian, you've been here a long time in the front office. Can you remember an off season where you guys have headed in with more to do and more possibilities than this?
I think there are a few that we had quite a bit to do, but this definitely stands out. So we see it as an exciting opportunity. Obviously very disappointing 2022, but we move forward with resources, with some good pieces in place, and we're excited to tackle all that we have to tackle, and it is a lot, but we're looking forward to it.
How much more likely is it that you use the trade avenue to address needs, given the improvement and build up in prospect inventory?
Yeah, I think that makes it more likely. We're in a situation where we are, and this has been the case, I think, increasingly every year that I've been here, where the decisions when it comes time to set your roster in November and then just look at roster spots in terms of what you need to do the rest of the offseason, those decisions get harder. That's a good thing. It means we have, depth of prospects, and especially prospects who are on the roster, eligible to go on the roster. To handle that properly, we need to, be willing to look at using some of those guys in trades. And it's both easier and more necessary to do that the deeper you get.
Alex, you talked yesterday about the sense of urgency that you want to see from the beginning of the season. As manager, how do you think you can foster that and get that happen?
I think it started yesterday. One of the things that, like I told you yesterday, the way they went about their business was good, and the way we finished, like I said, the results weren't there, but the process was the right one. The attitude was the right one. But yesterday the message was loud and clear, and not only from me, from some of the players that are going to be here next year. The offseason starts today. And, we're going to meet as a group after this, and, we're going to address a few things that we have to do better. But I think it starts with the players. And I think we got a few guys in there that, they've been winners. They've been in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs for 7 years in a row. In this case, Kike. And he was loud and clear, kind of like keep doing the things that we have to do to get better next year in the weight room and training room, like I always said. And I think they understand, how bad it was this year, how disappointed we are. And we just got to turn the page now. I know it's hard, to forget what happened last year, this past season, but we have to move forward. And like I said, there's a sense of urgency, and it started right after the game yesterday. There were some good speeches down there that, guys that have been here for a few years, only a few years, and they took that step to make sure the message was the right one.
How do you view the first base position? I mean, you got two left-handed hitting first basemen. Can you, is that with roster flexibility? Is that possible for next year? And then also, like, is Costas ready?
Yeah, to this question, obviously, with having two left-handed hitting first basemen, I guess the way with what we went through this year, the question about having too many options at first base is one we're happy to take. Short answer is I don't know yet. Obviously, when we got Haas, we were focused on what he could bring to us right now. And not wanting to rush Tristan. I think after that, Tristan showed us in AAA, coming back off that injury once he got settled in, really, I think the best we've seen from him, or at least that I've seen since I've been here. And then came up, and even though there were some ups and downs in terms of the results, the approach was very clear. I mean, that's one of the biggest things you worry about, especially with someone like him, is that when they make that jump to the highest level, that the approach that's kind of carried them through their careers will degrade. And you guys saw it; it didn't. Sometimes the results were there, sometimes there weren't, but he was a tough at bat every single time, which is going to be one of his calling cards as he goes forward. So that's all really encouraging. It's something we're going to have to look at. Couldn't be happier with how he progressed the last couple months of the season. I think he's gonna. You guys have gotten to know him a little bit over the years, and especially this last month. He takes it all in, and he's going to process it. And obviously, some of the things that went well, he can carry those forward. And some of the at bats or things in the field that didn't go as well, you can bet he's going to learn from them, and that makes us really excited.
You guys finished 20th in the majors in home runs. Most of the teams above you, of course, are in the playoffs, except for the Indians, they're 29th. But this is a power league, we all know that. Is that something you're going to focus on in this offseason, trying to build up the power on this team? And what about a pursuit of Aaron Judge?
Yeah, as far as home runs are concerned, that I think that's a good topic for a reason. We expected to have more home run power. Obviously, we did some things in the offseason, particularly to improve our defense, where there were some trade-offs there in some of the moves that we made. But, certainly, especially where we play, both the park we play and the division we're in, baseball right now, it's really hard to hit. If you can't score runs quickly and in bunches, it's going to be hard to win on some days. So that's definitely something that we want to focus on.
For the last 20 years, this franchise has had two very high-profile DHs, full-time guys that handle that job for 150-plus games. Do you see that continuing, or do you look at the model where other teams cycle through position players to give them a day off from playing defense? Is it philosophically? Do you want an everyday guy, or are you open to rotating through that? And maybe Alex's thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I really think it should be about what works for the club you put together. I mean, when you talk about those two guys with David and with JD, they're two of the best that have done it, during the course of my career. And when you have one of those guys, that's outstanding. There's also benefits to the other approach, and that's something that it really gets down to the personnel and who you're talking about. I think you're better off focusing on the caliber of the baseball player and what they bring to the table than starting from one point and saying we got to find somebody that fits that.
You look at Rafi's situation this winter. You look at is that something that you need to kind of get done this winter, try to get done this winter, or is that something that can go up next season? How do you look at that?
Yeah, we would like to. Nothing's changed in that regard. He's one of the best players in the game. He's shown the ability to perform on the biggest stages and to do it here, and he's someone that we want to build around.
Sam, do you anticipate a big drop in season ticket sales this off season?
We do not anticipate a big drop, just by virtue of the fact that we've got the most loyal fans who have supported us over these past 2 decades. So we're appreciative of that, and we anticipate good fan support. But obviously, it's our job to improve over this offseason, Johnny.
To that point, Sam, has a decision been made regarding ticket prices?
Yeah, we had a small single-digit increase in season ticket prices, 1.5–2% going into next year. And then, as you know, we price the rest of our inventory on a dynamic basis based upon demand. So prices go up and down based upon the market demand for tickets.
Looking ahead to next year, has there been any discussion about changing the start time of night games, perhaps like 6:45 or somewhere along those lines?
Yes, there has. We're looking at start times with the context of what's best for our fans, what's best for the baseball operation. We've had lots of discussions with players and AC and his staff and baseball operations. So we are looking at some potentially some different start times next year.
Alex, to piggyback off Sean's question about the DH, you talked about wanting to be more athletic and already have something that you wanted to do and how you want to play and the players you want. Going forward, what do you want to see? Like, what type of players do you think that need to be added?
Regarding the question, I think it's about the roster, right? All depends who we have and what we're gonna do. So, that's gonna dictate that spot, right? We're not complaining about David, we're not complaining about JD, right? But moving forward, whatever we do in the offseason is gonna dictate that, and I'm fine with that. As far as the players, one of the things that we've been talking about it, and I think where the game is going, right, is more athletic. Defense is important. But where the game is going next year with the new rules, we have to take advantage of certain situations, right? And I do believe at certain times we were stuck offensively this year, not only because we didn't hit the ball out of the ballpark, but running the bases and taking advantage of certain situations wasn't there. So we've been talking about this for a month and a half, and hopefully we get a more dynamic athletic club next year that we can actually, not only rely on the long ball or just doubles, that we can actually take advantage of the game.
Yeah, so related to that, you said earlier about the team having a lot of talent, but I think you used the term meshing together well, maybe. I had a conversation with AJ Hinch earlier this year about the extent at which a team should be built by going simply for the best player available, as opposed to types of a model, a player that fits your model. So the team does mesh together with the way you like to do things. How to either you and Alex do that.
I think, long story short, the more your roster fits together, the more it complements itself. Like the more Alex is going to be able to do with that roster during the game. Now, obviously, talent still matters. Like, it's a team sport, but it's also an individual sport. When you're a pitcher, when you're on the mound, you've got the baseball, and it's on you. And when you're in the box, it's on you. Same thing on the bases. Same thing on defense. But we've seen it. Even this year when we were going good, we saw it last year with navigating the season and into October. You can either gain a few extra inches or lose a few extra inches by how the roster fits together, and it's really all about giving Alex the most options that he can go to during a game, not just with the first 26, but with everybody else that is going to be part of this over the course of the season.
You guys have a lot of option decisions, obviously. I know you have time for those, but do you decide on any of those?
No, we've spent some time obviously talking about them and as part of our planning, but we're going to end up making final decisions when it's time.
That include Paxton, I assume?
Yeah.
I don't expect you to get too specific on this, but if you could talk in general terms about qualifying offers and the balance of protecting yourself with potential picks versus, maybe overpaying for a guy for 1 year. Can you just address how you see that and the possibility of extending so?
Yeah, again, without getting into it in detail, because it's not that time yet. It really is all going to come back to us looking at the merits of each decision. Some of these they are very obvious decisions, one way or the other, and some of them aren't. And that's basically, we're going to just take each one on its own merits and go from there.
And how do you look at Chris Sale going into next year? Whether you can rely on him or not from each year?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you talk about the situations that he's been in, the things that have happened. There's no reason, looking at next year, that he shouldn't be able to be a huge part of this. But obviously, you could probably go back and find instances of me saying exactly that in a lot of different ways over the last few years. And we know that when somebody hasn't carried a workload in a while, it means certain things for how you should plan. Look, he's a part of this. You guys know what he can do. We were really encouraged by how he looked when he came back in that short time before he got hurt again. We fully expect him to be a huge part of our success next year. It's always our responsibility to make sure, like I said earlier, that we're prepared for as many things as possible that can go wrong. So that's going to be a part of our offseason planning this year. But this guy, not only what he means on the field, but also what he means in the clubhouse, what he can bring to a group, how he can lift up the people around him. Obviously, when he's on the field, that all works better. But he's an elite talent, and we expect that to be the case next year.
Assuming you plan on him being a starter, you have to look at it like there's only going to be a certain amount of innings we can expect because he's been essentially hasn't played last year. Is that something that has to be factored in?
Yes and no. Yes, in terms of, again, we obviously have to plan on, whether it's with him or anybody, having to account for innings coming from other places. But also, I think, both within this group with some of our tremendous sports medicine performance staff, and also I think around the industry, I think we're seeing teams look at workload in a better way than just looking at an innings total, and getting people to a position where the day-to-day workload that they're maintaining is steady and is a lot more important than just assigning an arbitrary innings number. That played into some of how we handled Bayo this year, and allowing him to pitch until the end and not be bound by an arbitrary innings limit. So same would apply to Chris. It's obviously a different set of injuries, different stage of his career, but we have to be mindful of it all.
So you talked about Bayo a little bit. Do you expect him to be in the rotation next year going forward?
You guys saw what he can do. We have not gotten into nailing down, okay, what exactly does a rotation look like, but this guy is as much upside as any young pitcher who debuted in the big leagues this year. He showed it to us, and more consistently as the season went along, and I think most importantly, he became more confident in who he is and what plays at this level, and that's really exciting for us going forward.
Do you expect him to be at the big league level?
Again, we haven't, not because of him specifically, but not ready to make those pronouncements yet. But he showed us as much as you could want to see down the stretch.
And to your outfield situation, you guys talked about power. You didn't have much power production from your outfield. How do you plan on addressing that and sort of going forward into the next season? Because obviously that seemed like a huge gap between you and the rest of the other team in the league.
Yeah. Look, a lot of that's really just going to be a question of how the whole roster comes together. And like I said, just wanting to make good baseball moves to field a really good team. If we get too fixated in, okay, this power has to come from this position or this attribute has to come from another position, we might not be as good as we can be. We need to look at it all. Power is obviously a huge part of that, but we want to put together, a really good roster that can win on a nightly basis.
How mindful do you have to be of clubhouse dynamics, and what did you learn about that this year, whether it's making a contract offer or making a trade, just how things are received in the clubhouse?
Yeah, look, I think these guys are not just players, they're people, and it's really important to be aware of that. I've always believed that. I would also say, at the end of the day, I think, after a few years here, if somebody were to ask me, what are the Boston Red Sox, what are the Boston Red Sox really about? I would say the Red Sox are really about winning and about family. And so from my chair, that comes down to making really good baseball moves and taking care of this family. And anything that isn't really about one and hopefully both of those things is a distraction. And we need to focus on those two things.
Do you feel the team handled those things well this year? It seemed like after the trade deadline, like you said about Vasquez, it seemed like Bogarts was maybe distracted by his contract uncertainty all year. There are lessons to learn from that.
you know, again, these guys are people, and especially in Boston, where people care so much and there's so many eyeballs on you. You know, there's more that you know that is going to be seen kind of in raw form. And you know, if you're Bogey and this guy's been your seatmate for 7-8 years, and he gets dealt in that moment. You know, I'd feel the same way. It's not, you're not thinking about the baseball move, you're thinking about your friend and how you feel about that. And I would never want to take that away from someone, nor should we. You know, that's part of life. So, you know, I think what stood out to me, obviously there were a lot of ups and downs, but I think this group held together really well. They played hard, wire to wire. A lot of that's a credit to Alex and the staff, but also to those players. It's really easy to get distracted by a lot of different things, and I think you'd be naive not to expect a group of guys being together, you know, for 162 games, not to have that occasionally happen. But on the whole, they stuck together, and that was really cool to see.
As you guys do assemble the next year's roster, you have two pieces of pitching staff whose roles are uncertain with Rick Rocket out. How do you see their roles going forward?
Yeah, you know, this is something where, obviously with them both, you know, coming through injury rehabs, you know, we need to have some steps of that evolve before we really set a plan. The one thing I would say, you know, as much as possible, you want to minimize uncertainty when you get to spring training. And I think for a number of reasons, and some of that's on us, we didn't do that with those guys, and it put everybody in a tough position. So we want to do better with that this year.
How do you view the leadoff spot, whether it's someone here or someone that you might try to acquire? What attributes do you kind of look for? You haven't had maybe a consistent guy in that spot for a while. You talk about the athleticism of the team. Obviously, leadoff is key for that spot.
Yeah, for me, like a lot of that, it really comes out of a lot of conversation that we have, you know, especially with Alex. I think we need to make sure as we're making moves to put together a club that we're in sync with, okay, how are players best used and how does this all fit together? And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, once we have the roster together on any given day, Alex is going to put together the best lineup to win the game. And, you know, so a lot of it's just going to come out of the conversations that we have. There's a lot of different profiles that can work, as you could even see last year, you know, with our team. We had different guys up there and had success in different ways. But, you know, beyond that, I think it really falls out of our conversations and ultimately what Alex thinks puts us in the best position to win that night.
You said that you hope to talk to Devers about a long-term deal. If one does not come together this offseason, would you entertain trading him, and why or why not?
So, you know, in general, and there have been exceptions, I don't generally think we or any organization should be in the business of, and this is something I've told players, should be in the business of saying, okay, I can guarantee you X or Y, because, you know, and I think a lot of players I've had this conversation with would agree that in theory there's always something somebody could put in front of you that you'd be stupid to walk away from. But, you know, that isn't on our radar. He is number one, first and foremost. He's a guy that we want to build around, and he's hugely important to what we're doing. We hope he's here not just next year, but in the years to come. And, you know, I think we're in a position now, we expect and fully intend to be able to put a really good team on the field that can win next year. That's really important, and I don't see how we make life easier for ourselves by him not being a part of that, to say nothing of the years to come.
Sam, you've talked a lot about the importance of homegrown player retention. How pivotal is that? How central an aspect of this offseason is that? Would it be a disappointment if you did not come to spring training next year with at least one and perhaps both of those guys as part of the Red Sox for the long haul?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've said this before, but, you know, Chaim's job and BOH's job are two of the toughest jobs in the building, that I would be particularly bad at, because I fall guilty of falling in love with our players, and particularly our homegrown players. So it's really, really difficult. Of course, I'd be disappointed. You've got Xander Bogaerts and Rafi Devers, two of the most important people in the history of this organization. So I hope we can find a way to not only bring them back or keep them here, extend them, but have a team around them that is built for success in October. That's the key thing here.
Is it realistic to be able to sign both of them to long-term deals and to build that team around them?
I hope so.
Sam, some other teams have sold off some of their broadcast inventory and streaming services. Are there any thoughts of doing that here?
Yeah, we actually launched kind of a pilot program this year with Nessun 360, which is a streaming service available, which was well received. In fact, the first RSN in the country to do that. So look, we got to be where our fans are, and like it or not, our fans are right here, and you need to be where your fans are, where they want your product, 24/7, no matter where you are in the world. So we're going to continue to explore new and different avenues to get Red Sox baseball to our fans.
I meant more outside your broadcast empire, as it were. Like the Yankees have sold 20 games to Amazon Prime. Would you ever consider doing that outside of the Nessun umbrella?
No.
Since one of the first things you did in Boston was to trade Mookie, is there anything you learned from that experience that will change your approach maybe to the other young players coming up and needing deals?
Yeah, I mean, try to learn from everything that we do. I think, all these situations are individual. Part of why we set the course that we did when I came here was, anticipating, knowing we were going to be in this situation where not the best division in baseball was going to get even better because every other team in the baseball was either already in a position of strength or trying to get there the right way, and shortcuts were not going to help or benefit us because as we sat there and as I think 2019 showed, we weren't the class of the division. So that dictated a certain approach, and ultimately we got a deal for Mookie that we felt was in our interest. So there's things that I take away from that as with everything. But part of the reason that we've done what we've done the last couple of years is never to be in that position again. And I'm not sitting here telling you that we have achieved baseball nirvana. We're exactly where we want to be. We're not, but we've made a lot of progress. We are in a different situation and a better situation, I think, as far as how the organization is set up. So I don't think we're going to have the exact parallel to that situation again.
Just going back to what Alex was saying about kind of the sense of urgency. You've talked a lot since you've gotten here about kind of balancing the present and the future. Do you plan on kind of changing that balance, or how do you see that balance shifting, if at all, going forward?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. It's something I've thought about this year, and honestly, I think that's something that every good organization does. But we want to win, and maybe that's on me for framing things the way I did. But every good organization is doing that. I think in different ways, and the sense of urgency, the competitiveness that has underlied everything we've done. And if I've communicated that in a way to make it think we're trading off some kind of sense of urgency or desire to win because of different decisions we made or different ways we navigated things, then that's on me because that we're in this for one reason, which is to win. And with everything, whether at bat to at bat, game to game, season to season, every organization, everybody is always trading that off. And I think what it really comes back to, obviously different organizations can be in different positions. Like I said, we were in a different position a few years ago with Mookie than we are now. But it really comes back to making good moves. And you will be rewarded if you have a good process and make good baseball moves. Some of the best things that have happened here while I've been here, and a lot of the success that we have had, wouldn't have happened if we were too focused on that kind of now future stuff as opposed to just making good moves. We took a guy in the Rule 5 last year who ended up being one of the best pitchers on our team. If we had just been focused on, okay, where's the dial now future, then we wouldn't have made that move. But we stayed focused on, having a good process, making good moves. That's been behind a lot of the good things that we have done. It's part of what makes me confident that, we can be even better going forward as long as we keep our sights set in the right place. But, that we're trying to win. We are always trying to win. And I think we have set the organization up better to be able to do that in a lot of different ways going forward. And that starts now.
Now that you've been here for a while, and there's now kind of pressure to flip it from what works at first. There's urgency there. Is it harder to see the long view? Like, do you feel like it has to be more focused on the present that way?
Yeah, I think it kind of comes back to how I answered Jason's question. I think if you get distracted from making good moves, you will hurt yourself. And you've seen that historically here and in other places, that when you try to respond to disappointment or failure with shock and awe, it usually doesn't go well, unless that shock and awe also happens to come with a really good baseball move. And so that's what we got to stay focused on, is doing the right things every day, just like Alex expects our players to do, to going after every day to the fullest, and trying to do the right things to position the organization to win.
Alex, would you think Story would be an option at shortstop if it came to that, or are you I guess this is for anybody, but Alex, I'll start with Alex. Yeah, do you want Story to be a second baseman in the league?
I think he can handle shortstop. I do believe. I know a lot of people talk about his arm, but just watching him this year, going to his right, playing deep in the shift, he was never exposed, And he's a different type of shortstop than second base. At second base, he plays back and he waits for the ball to get to him. When he plays short, he plays fast and he's always on the run. So, to answer your question, I do believe he can handle shortstop.
You guys were obviously able to address some health concerns mid-season, during the season because of where you were in the standings. Anyone else who requires surgeries or any kind of, medical situations heading into the offseason that are known?
I'm trying to think what we've already said. None that I think have been reported.
I don't think there's anything new that you're not aware of already.
And with the catching situation, how do you view the obviously having McGuire long versus exploration of the market?
Yeah, I think both of these guys showed well, which is good for them, good for us. We didn't want to be in the position we were in at the end, but we tried to make the most of that position in terms of giving them opportunity, both for their growth and benefit, and also for ours. So I think they definitely raised the floor of what we have. Now that said, this is one of the areas that I fully expect we're gonna explore additions. It's nice to know that we have two guys that are familiar with how we do things, that showed a lot of good things, but we owe it to ourselves and everybody who cares about this team to look to get better, and catcher's certainly not going to be an exception to that.
When Sam talked about the emotion he feels about Devers and Bogarts in your role, is it part of your job to take that value into account, or are you trying to present ownership just contract recommendations based strictly on who this player is on the field, the production he gives, wins and losses, and then if ownership wants to say, hey, he's more valuable to us than that because of other things, they can step in and do so. What's your role in trying to take the intangibles and the bigger impact of a player into account when making contracts?
Yeah, we should be taking that into account, or we're not doing our jobs. There's obviously a layer to some decisions that go beyond baseball ops that become organizational decisions. But if we're not taking that into account, then I just think we're ignoring reality. Like I said, these guys, they're not chess pieces. They're people. That's a group of people in there every day. And the season and the grind of the season requires different things of people, and it requires you to dig deep sometimes. And there's value to knowing that you have people who can do that, and also that you have people who not just can handle but also embrace everything that comes with making Fenway Park your home. So that is a huge part of what we do. I mean, there's no question. Obviously, sometimes this game, especially the AL East, doesn't give you that much margin for sentimentality when it's in the wrong place. But if we're not factoring in who people are, and not just their tools or their baseball skill, then we're not doing a good job.
I'm just looking ahead, Alex.
Yeah, this is one of those things. This is another thing that, unfortunately, because we've had the time and the mind space to focus on things beyond 2022 over the last month, we've talked about. Two thoughts on that, and one of them is that I think we can predict, we can make educated guesses, we can put our heads together about what might be the results of some rules changes or changes in the game. But there are always going to be things you don't know about how stuff is going to happen in reality. And so, to think we know too much about how exactly it's going to play when you have 30 teams competing against each other to make the most of those rules, we'd probably be getting too far ahead of ourselves. So we don't want to do anything based on those rules that gets us away from making good baseball decisions. The second thing I would say is just to pick up on something Alex said. I think a lot of the talk of new rules, understandably so, whenever people in the game, especially players, get asked about them, is more about, oh, this is going to be different. What is this going to mean? Is this going to hurt me? There's a whole other side of it that Alex alluded to, which is, going on the offensive and figuring out how do we win with these rules, and how do we beat other teams with these rules. And that's not something that just we are going to be doing. It's something that 29 other teams are going to be doing. But the rules are not just something that happen to us. There are things like everything in this game that we can compete and win with, and we've already started talking about what that looks like, and we need to continue those discussions into the winter.
Along those lines, the ball behaved in a different way this year than it had in previous years. Are you able to enter the offseason knowing what the ball is going to be like next year, and how does, and if not, how does the variability impact how you can approach building power?
Yeah, again, this is one of those things that, as with rules changes, there's only so much you can try to predict. I know everybody who is involved with the baseball or really anything going on with our game is very well-intentioned and trying to get the best version of baseball that we can. Obviously, everything that goes into the game is a part of that. We, as long as we know, and we do, that we're going to be playing with the same baseballs as the other 29 clubs, then everybody's on level playing field. And I can tell you this, we don't know everything that's going to happen, with the baseball. I don't think anybody does. But we're not going to win because we figure out a way to take advantage of the baseball. We're going to win because we put together a good team and do the right things to compete.
We're looking at a Bogarts deal, not the money, but more so the length of the deal. How do you balance a known commodity in Bogarts and what he's given to this organization and proven player in the majors versus some of the younger prospects, bright prospects have bright futures a few years down the road, but unknown commodities, and how the length of a deal affects that kind of process?
When it comes to that, a few years down the road is a few years down the road. That's something. If that becomes a problem, it usually finds a way to solve itself. We need to be focused on putting together good teams, putting together a good team for 2023. Obviously, you're always mindful of the bigger picture, but it is never, ever a problem to have more capable players than roster spots. In fact, that's what you need to have in order to be a winning organization. So, that's not really a consideration here.
Alex, how long do you think Xander can play shortstop for?
I mean, the way he trains, the way he moves, the way he goes about his business in the off season, probably as long as he can handle it. Like his body hasn't changed in 3 or 4 years. When it changes, it's getting more explosive and stronger. So I don't know. I cannot answer you years, whatever, but I do believe we saw strides this year, and we just asked him to do just a few things. So with his work ethic and the way he goes about it, time will tell. But we do believe that, he played really good this year, just making a few adjustments.
Any last questions for the group? Yeah, I went behind. This circles back to just how close and far away this team is. You had by far the best run differential of any last place team in baseball. You're both going to a more balanced schedule where you're playing fewer games against, the beasts of the East, so to speak. Is this team, if it comes back essentially the same personnel and everybody stays healthy, no major meaningful upgrades, is this a postseason team?
I expect that when we do get to spring training, we're going to have a different roster than we have now. So that isn't for me, I haven't spent much time thinking about that because I don't think that's going to be the case. You know, part of our confidence in the direction we're setting comes from feeling that, you know, we have the pieces here that if we do the right things this offseason, we're going to be able to field a really strong team. You know, what you said about the division is true, but on some level, it doesn't matter. This is where we are. You know, yeah, it's a really tough division. We know that. You know, we need to go win, and we feel we have pieces here to win. But we also need to do the right things as far as building out this club to give us the best chance to do that, and we will.
Anyone else? All right, thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Really list Jerry Sisti.
Number 12. I love the guy.
We will.